So our speaker today is Diane Gleim. Thanks, Diane. MFT, and she's an experienced and sex-positive licensed marriage and family therapist with advanced training in the psychotherapy portion of the various treatments for sexual dysfunction, sexual identity, and sexual expression. She works with both LGBTQ and heterosexual adult individuals and couples. Her areas of specialty include lower absent libido, sexual avoidance, sexual pain, erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, inability to orgasm, alternative sexualities like kink, swinging, and polyamory, and lastly, issues related to sexual identity. She assists couples in working through the pain of a betrayal, whether that is the result of an affair, pornography, or some other cause. Welcome, Diane.
Testing, how we doing? Okay, let me put this in here. Hi, everybody. Good morning. I want to thank Chris. I want to thank Denise and everybody here at Recamp for allowing me to speak today. I don't make it out of my office very often. I have a pretty full private practice, so it's a big deal for me to be here, and I'm excited to be here. So today I'm going to talk about common mistakes therapists make when treating sexual issues. So I need to also figure this out a little bit. So I know Chris said this earlier. Chris needs to do it too, apparently. Please turn off all your devices. Who knows what you got in your purse? All right. Oop, I have to point it. Okay, so Denise told you a little bit about who I am. I'd like to tell you a little bit more. I have a full-time private practice here in Santa Rosa. I was a clinical supervisor over at Community and Family Service Agency until its doors closed, sadly, in December. And in fact, one of my interns is here today, so it's really great to see her here. And I'm also pursuing a professional certification through an organization called ASECT, American Association of Sex Educators, Counselors, and Therapists, www.asect.org if you're interested. They're the only folks in Northern California who certify folks in various things. The one I'm pursuing is to become a certified sex therapist. Currently, there are no certified sex therapists in Sonoma County. There's one in Napa, and there's a handful around Sacramento. Obviously, there's a lot more in Marin, Great San Francisco Bay Area, et cetera. I'm pursuing this certification actively right now, and I've been doing it for about a year. And if all goes well, I should be done with my requirements by the end of this year, submitting my application for certification at the end of the year. That being said, I've been licensed for a while, and I have been pursuing sexuality, sex therapy as a specialty since before I got licensed. So I've been doing this a long time. So that's who I am. Confidentiality. So I'm going to talk about a few cases. Some are hypothetical. One, in fact, is an actual case that I'm currently treating. It's later in my presentation. So I just ask that when we get to that point where we're talking about my particular client, just keep in mind confidentiality. I do have my client's permission to present his situation today. And lastly, we're talking about sex. So there's knowing the mouth that I have, I'm probably going to say some slang terms. I might even I'll say some clinical terms. I jump in and out. I use all kinds. So I figure we're all adults, 18 and over. But just a reminder, we're talking about sex. Okay? One of my favorite subjects. So what we will discuss today. So I'm going to talk about what sex negativity is, heteronormative assumptions are, what heterosexual privilege and microaggressions are, and the impact these can have in the therapy room with our clients. I'll also discuss 9 common mistakes therapists make while treating sexual issues and at the same time offering sex-positive therapeutic interventions. But first, here are some common reasons therapists are hesitant to really talk to their clients about sex. I provide consultation to other therapists as well. I've given other trainings in the past. When I ask people what's stopping you, here are the list of reasons that I've heard over the years. Lack of expertise and training, or a lack of competence. A lack of confidence. Something will be thrown at me that I don't know how to deal with. Whether to reveal my own familiarity with alternative sexual lifestyles like BDSM, poly, or kink, and my own sexual shame. To that, all of those things I say, of course. We live in the same sexually ignorant, sexually oppressive, and sex-negative cultures that our clients live in. And we are vulnerable as clinicians to the same complex, contradictory, and confusing sexual thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that they have too. In fact, we probably have some of our own. 2009 research was done about this very subject and found that 2/3 of female therapists and 1/3 of male therapists have experienced molestation, the majority of incidents with a close relative. So our training tells us to keep our stuff out of the therapeutic relationship. So perhaps that's why many therapists avoid the topic entirely. So let me define what I mean by sexually ignorant, sexually oppressive, and sex-negative society. So sexual ignorance, it's all over the place. I hear this word all the time, vagina. People talk, I've heard my clients say it to me. I hear it in the media. Most of the time, we're not talking about the actual vagina. We're talking about the vulva. But where is that voice correcting that misinformation? In terms of sexually oppressive society, there's institutionalized discrimination in the legal, medical, and educational systems. For example, there are laws regarding sex workers, same-sex marriage, and hopefully everybody here knows about this new reporting requirement effective January 1. We have to report, we are mandated reporters of clients disclose that they have viewed, downloaded, viewed, streamed child pornography. Are people aware of this? Yeah, okay, yeah. In terms of the medical systems, there are healthcare limits on sexual health services and treatments. For example, I have a client, a trans client, and he comes to see me. He uses his health insurance through his employer to come see me after the first appointment. I submitted a claim with gender identity disorder, gender dysphoria as the diagnosis. The claim was denied, and the insurance company said this diagnosis is not a covered benefit. And then in terms of I'm sorry? Yes. Yeah. I
just said it's illegal now to deny that.
Right. Oh, it's illegal now. I've tried, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's all right. Thanks, Chris. And then in terms of discrimination in our educational systems, sex education in public schools, the content is highly controversial, as we say in my field. It primarily addresses prevention and plumbing. There's no discussion or explanation teaching of pleasure, consent, seeking consent, giving consent, boundaries, self-awareness, nothing. It's prevention and plumbing. And I say your own, my own, our own graduate level education on this very subject. I went to University of San Francisco to get my master's degree. At that time, 10, 12 years ago, they didn't even offer a human sexuality class. When I asked my program director, why is that? She said to me, because you can go get your 10-hour pre-licensure CEU for much cheaper. I wish she was concerned about my tuition fees in other areas than just one class. I also know that MFT LCSW programs vary greatly in whether or not they give this, they offer this class. I know some folks who've gotten a semester-long class in human sexualities. Others got a weekend. Myself, I got nothing. Had to go get my 10-hour pre-licensure CEUs. And then lastly, the term sex negative society. I don't know if folks have heard this. What we mean by this is that it is heavily based in shame and danger, I should add. There's something inherently dangerous about sexuality, with a hierarchy of sexual acts, with PV sex usually as the goal. And PV sex, what we mean by that in the field is penis-vagina sex, intercourse, penetration. That's part of a sex-negative view. Sex is not a one-size-fits-all experience. Sexuality is unique to the individual, but can still cause common themes of mental, emotional, and relationship distress. I think as therapists, we intuitively understand this paradox, but unless we self-reflect and seek additional training, we're bound to flounder. Any questions, comments so far? I'm going to check in. Please feel free to raise your hand, ask questions. I want this to be a dialogue, a conversation that we all have. Yes, hi. Yes, www.aasect.org.
Is that the same as the CSAT or CSAT?
No, that's a different association that does sex addiction, certified sex addiction therapist, yes. Yes, hi.
Hi, and a comment about the sex negative in the culture that now the sexual harassment laws and training in companies, really like any saucy remark is considered harassment. So.
Right. Yes. So it's yeah, I don't know how to phrase this. Yeah, it's there's very little tolerance. Yes. Yeah. Hi. Yeah. It's already in effect, effective January 1. There was it's AB 1775. If you get the Therapist magazine from Recount, there's a big article in it this month clarifying it. Yeah. Yeah. I also want to say that research shows that while therapists tend to be more politically liberal than our clients, therapists, we tend to be more sexually conservative than our clients. I'm seeing some nods. So I think that without some uniform trainings, or if people don't pursue something more than what's minimally required, I think therapists tend to fall back on their own subjective experience when clients are talking about sex and their sexual choices, asking themselves, would I do what the client is doing? And without more advanced training, without seeking consultation, the therapist makes some judgments. So how, as therapists, can we work with clients when they talk to us or we ask them about their sex lives? I say start by taking a sex-positive view, but what does this mean? There's a lot of different definitions out there about what being sex-positive means. Here's mine. That sexual relationships can be healthy and look a lot of different ways that I'm not familiar with, even when a sexual relationship behavior or identity gives me an uncomfortable feeling. So let's just dive right in. Common mistake number 1, okay? Not being aware of your own heteronormative assumptions, heterosexual privilege, and microaggressions in your office practice or with your clients. I'm going to go back and forth in these slides for this particular mistake, so bear with me. What do I mean by heteronormative assumptions? These are automatic, unconscious beliefs and expectations that reinforce heterosexuality and relationships as the ideal norm. They create a society where only heterosexual relationships are visible. Sexual minorities do not see healthy reflections of them of themselves out in the world. Leads well-intentioned people to ignore the needs and realities of the, how do you like that for an acronym? LGBTQIAH, individuals and relationships. Should I define all of those letters? Yeah. Okay. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex. A can be asexual or ally, and H stands for HIV status. Oh, yeah. And examples of heteronormative assumptions in the therapy room include that a therapist assumes every client is in a heterosexual relationship or of a heterosexual orientation. And this is one that I've encountered with interns and other therapists I consult with. When you're working with gay, lesbian, or trans couples, believing that all couples are couples, when in fact, gay, lesbian, and trans couples have their own unique set of challenges. And if the therapist is not aware of what those are or could be, or don't even ask, that's the heteronormative assumption. They're like me, if in fact you are heterosexual. Let me back up. So interventions with this one can be increase or maintain your self-awareness, make changes where you can, repair with the client when needed. If you made an assumption, own it with the client. Say, I apologize. Tell me more about your particular situation, your unique circumstances. Heterosexual privilege is the unearned civil rights, societal benefits, and advantages granted to individuals based solely on their sexual orientation. Operates in much the same way as white privilege and male privilege. There's an increased sense of worth known as internalized superiority that comes with being part of the dominant socially sanctioned group. Examples in the therapy room include that the therapist feels they can freely display pictures of their romantic partner without fear of retribution, or that a client can easily locate a therapist with their same sexual orientation. Pay attention to the, yes?
Okay, question. If you are using the word norm, is that a value statement or is that just to be describing a demographic in terms of norm?
When I say norm, like heteronormative assumptions, I mean it in the sociological sense that there's norms, commonly understood beliefs, ways of behaving. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes? I will get to it. Yes, thanks. Good, we're excited. I love it. Okay. So pay attention to the personal items that you have in your office. Doesn't mean you can't have a picture of your family, for example. Just be careful, be sensitive. Think about who your clients are. Where is it positioned in your office in relation to the client's chairs, your couch, etc. Microaggressions. Here we go. All right. Are the everyday verbal, nonverbal, and environmental slights, snubs, or insults, whether intentional or unintentional, which communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative messages to target persons based solely on their marginalized group membership? We all do this. Examples in the therapy room, especially if done by a cisgendered therapist. Are we familiar what being cisgendered is? Some are, some aren't. Okay, so let's talk about this. So this is a phrase, a concept that was that is in reference to transgendered folks. So cis is Latin, and it means same or similar. So a cisgendered therapist, or a person, is someone who at the time of birth was assigned a gender. How do we assign gender? Genitals, right. Either the doctor sees during the ultrasound or at the time of birth. Congratulations, you have a boy, a girl, based on how the genders appear. A gender is assigned boy or girl. As an adult, we make a decision. Am I in fact male? Am I in fact female? Am I in fact something else? So a cisgendered person is someone who, as an adult, identifies with the gender that was given to them at the time of birth. Okay. The vast majority of people, statistically speaking, there are more cisgendered folks than there are queer, trans, self-identified people. So these are some very common microaggressions that happen. We all do them, myself included. Thinking that sexual orientation or lifestyle choices are the cause of a client's mental health problems. Minimizing sexual orientation or coming out. Making stereotypical assumptions about women, men, gay men, lesbians, bisexuals, etc. I'm going to get into this more. As an example, perhaps people have heard of the concept, the joke, lesbian bed death. People know what this means, that once two lesbian women partner up, have established a relationship, that they become deeply enmeshed very quickly, and as a result of that, frequency of sex decreases. Okay? Lesbian bed death it's sort of a joke out there. However, lesbians are no more enmeshed than gay men or heterosexual couples. Research shows that lesbians actually report the highest amount of satisfaction with their sexual relationship, and they are the most orgasmic, more than gay men and more than heterosexuals. Anyone want to take a guess why? Women know women. They spend a good amount of time on foreplay and clitoral stimulation. Yeah. So that assumption is out there. What's that? More than men. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that assumption's out there when in fact research shows otherwise. Okay. That's just one stereotypical assumption. Another is subtly warning clients of the dangers. Are you sure you want to transition? Lack of sensitivity regarding body parts, genders, and pronouns in your own language and on your intake forms or questionnaires. I encourage you all, if you have intake forms, questionnaires, go back, look at the language. When you ask sexual orientation or who do you have sex with, instead of phrasing it in that way, sexual orientation is valid, but who do you have sex with? Who are you married to? Pay attention to whether you're creating binary choices. Mm-hmm. Ask, whom do you have sex with? My intake form says which gender, parenthesis S, other parentheses, genders, do you have sex with? Mm-hmm. And lastly, lack of gender-neutral bathrooms where you work. I myself, in my office, I have no control over the bathrooms. There's a men's restroom, there's a women's restroom. I can't ask them, they won't change it. I know not every office is the same, but also going back to what a good intervention is repair with the client when needed. If you're working with trans or queer folks, apologize for the fact that there aren't gender-neutral bathrooms. That matters. That matters to them, it matters to the relationship you're building with them. Okay, common mistake number 2. Oh boy, okay. Lack of thorough assessment or simply not asking. A great opening question when you're working with anybody, not just couples, adult individuals. How's your sex life? Great opening question. I alternate between how's your sex life or what's happening, what's going on in the bedroom. I feel like with some clients, I can be more direct, how's your sex life? Others, I need to be more indirect, what's going on in the bedroom. Mm-hmm. So interventions, remember, if we don't ask, often our clients won't say. Have courage. It can be awkward to ask people about that. What's happening? What's going on in the bedroom, sexually? Get grounded. Take a curious stance. Even if you're not treating this sexual issue per se, make it part of your overall initial assessment. If they say, if you ask them, how are things going in the bedroom? And they say, fine. You have a choice. Do I let that go, or do I dive a little deeper? Mm-hmm. Ask a lot of questions. I find that in particularly, because I'm a cisgendered woman, I find that I have a lot of male clients that come to me for individual therapy, for sex therapy. There seems to be, I hear this a lot, I can talk to a woman more easily than I can talk to a man. That being said, so many of the men that come into my office to work on sexual dysfunction, when I say, what are you here for, what's going on? I can't perform sexually, is what they say. I'm a sex therapist. I don't even know what that means. You can't perform sexually. I think an inexperienced or a nervous therapist would, okay, make some assumptions and go with it. There's a lot of shame that men experience around their sexual abilities, sexual functioning, and therefore sexual dysfunction. So we have to poke and prod our clients, get specific. So if they say, I can't perform sexually, ask, what do you mean by that? Well, I have ED. A lot of men don't really know the true definition of ED. Tell me what you mean by that. So tell me what happens. Just keep asking question after question after question. If a man says, I can't stay hard, question that. You mean you can't get hard? You can't stay hard. There's a big difference. This line of questioning gives the clients permission to really look at their situation and talk about it. In addition, your questions you're also doing an assessment. You're determining, is it, what are they, lifelong or situational ED, generalized versus situational? Does it always happen with every sexual partner every time, or are there certain situations, circumstances where this occurs? Also, a really important question in your assessment is, have you noticed anything that helps you or interferes with your ability to, for example, stay hard? This helps the client achieve their goals in that we're looking for exceptions. This is a fundamental principle of sex therapy. Look for the exceptions, look for the successes, and build on those. That alleviates a lot of shame that clients can feel. And it provides hope. I find it very difficult in the initial assessment to get people into that place of hope. They want to talk about the problem. I want to hear about the problem too, but I also want to hear about the exceptions. Another example I hear this often, a couple comes to me, we don't have sex. I'm a sex therapist. What do you mean by sex? I don't know. That can mean any number of things. Yeah. So again, get down to the nitty gritty. Ask a lot of questions. Common mistake number 3, verbally and non-verbally supporting the client's heteronormative assumptions, stereotypes, and cultural tropes about sex. Okay. So I have a whole list here on my next slide. Typical stereotypes and assumptions and tropes about sex. Thinking that sex is for reproduction. These are beliefs that we all have, consciously or unconsciously, and we have to go through a process to challenge them, every one of us, therapists, clients included. Thinking that women want marriage or monogamy, but not men. That men want to spread their seed. That's from evolutionary psychology. If you're really interested in this topic in particular, at the end in your handout, I have a list of additional resources. And the book Sex at Dawn talks a lot about the research that debunks this very notion. Thinking that only men get visually turned on, while women get turned on by an emotional connection. There's another great book out there called What Do Women Want? That's also should be listed in the back. And in this book, the author talks, right in the beginning of the book, talks about a researcher in Canada, because this work probably can't actually happen in the United States. Her name is Meredith Chivers, and she's in Canada doing all sorts of interesting research, one of which is she invites her subjects, this is the research, she gets their genitals hooked up to machines to measure arousal, whether it's men or women, and she then shows them visual imagery of all sorts of sexual acts, heterosexuals having sex, gay men having sex, lesbians having sex, even apes or gorillas, our closest relatives, genetic relatives having sex. And she asks them before they watch the imagery, she says, you're about to see the following, which ones do you think will turn you on? And the heterosexuals, both men and women, say the heterosexual sex. The gays and lesbians say the gay and lesbian sex. The ape sex is not going to turn me on. And then she shows them, and those machines are measuring their arousal. Here's what's fascinating. The men, gay men, straight men, all what they say will turn them on, in fact, did turn them on. So the straight men got aroused by watching straight sex, did not get aroused by watching gay sex, by watching the apes. You'd expect that, right? But with the women, here's what's really fascinating. The women said there would only be certain things that would turn them on, when in fact everything turned them on. And this has major implications, including the apes, by the way. That the conclusion, and is an interesting one, that women's subjective experience of their desires, of their arousals, that there's more to it. If they say it's just A, in fact, it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And a woman's not necessarily open to that or aware of that. Fascinating. So that's that book, What Do Women Want? And so thinking that only men get visually turned on is not true. Meredith Chivers has debunked that. Thinking that men want sex and women want love. And thinking that men have higher libidos and women have lower libidos. Probably 50% of my couples caseload, I'm working with couples if it's not infidelity or betrayal. The other half of it is what I call a desire discrepancy. I've heard it called mismatched libidos. I don't like the term mismatched libidos. I think it's very easy for people to then jump to the conclusion that, well, then we're not a match. That has some that conclusion has major implications. To say there's a desire discrepancy, there is one person has a higher libido, one person has a lower libido. Probably 50% of those couples, it's the men that have the lower libidos. So it's just some anecdotal information there for you. So yes, Chris, hi.
In the book, Sex at Dawn, I haven't read it, but I've heard a lot about it and heard some talks from one of the guys who wrote it.
Yeah.
Thanks. I just want to clarify, isn't it that the thing that book has debunked from evolutionary psychology is not that men want to spread their seed, but that men want to spread their seed and women want to spread their seed? That both men and women are equally polyamorous.
Right, right, yes. There's a question in the back. Do we want to mic her?
As much as I loved it when I read Sex at Dawn, unfortunately, I have a pretty scholarly background, and it doesn't fly in terms of the research and his credentials and how he's presented himself. So as much as I would like to believe it, and it's a wonderfully funny book, and I've heard him talk, I now caution people to not necessarily assume that it's necessarily true. And even some of the researchers who are sex positive or have done, particularly around the issue of monogamy and non-monogamy, who he quotes in there, have said he's totally distorted what we're doing. And he doesn't really have a background in evolutionary psychology, even though he presents himself as having that. So I hate it that it turned out to be that way, damn it. But one of the studies he quotes, I think it's on women and them being multi-orgasmic or something. It turned out the original study was based on 2 women.
Yes.
So I caution people around that book.
Yeah. Thank you for that. There is a book that's been written. I wasn't going to say this, but Sex at Dusk. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I have not read that book. That's on my nightstand.
And the woman doesn't identify who she is, self-published. And anyway, so
okay.
It's just taking the pieces.
Fun. Okay. So we all have these are heteronormative assumptions and stereotypes about sex. I don't know how you can live in our society and our culture and not have them. So as therapists, we need to get knowledgeable on these things. Another great intervention is to challenge the client's beliefs. I hear this often when working with heterosexual couples, and if it's the man, the husband who has the higher libido and the wife who has the lower libido. At some point, the wife will throw up her hands and say, well, I thought all men were horny all the time. Don't all men want sex? And I say to that, well, you're not in relationship with all men. I don't know all men. You're in relationship with this guy sitting right here. What does he want? So there's ways to challenge that, to say, I don't know if that's really the case, that all men are horny all the time and want sex all the time. Those tactics, those statements are distancing tactics in couples therapy. Well, I thought all men wanted sex. That's moving away from relating to their partner. We have to get them back into relating with that person sitting right there. Okay. Common mistake number 4, not being comfortable with sexual motivations, expressions, beliefs, identities, or behaviors, either that we don't know about or are not similar to our own, okay? When we're not comfortable, there's a lot of transference that can happen. We can make judgments about sexual acts as being unnatural, disgusting, strange. We can, you go back to stereotypes. Like I said, the one about lesbian bed death. Another one is that gay men struggle to be monogamous. It's very easy to go into this place of viewing clients' individual sexual choices as pathological when we're not familiar, or as I said earlier, it gives us that uncomfortable feeling. So what I have here is, why do people have sex? So research from 2007 reported that the number one reason was I was attracted to the other person. I believe this is some flawed research. This research was done on a university campus. The researchers were teaching an introductory psych class. They gave extra credit to their students for filling out this questionnaire over the course of several years. So the research subjects were college freshmen and sophomores, 18 to 20 something, early 20s. So it makes sense that the number one reason was I was attracted to the person. Also, it was heavily skewed to women. There was something like 2,000 subjects, 1,500 of which were women, only 500 were men. So that's the more current research. However, the one I always return to is this from 1998, that these are some of the many reasons people have sex. As a validation of deep intimacy within a relationship. Oh, that feels good as therapists, right? Yeah. As a way of getting to know someone, that feels kind of good too, for reproduction. To reduce sexual tension, as a way of experiencing new feelings, excitement, risk. For recreational purposes, to alleviate feelings of insecurity. Oh, that's potentially worrisome. I mean, these are the assumptions a lot of therapists make. To prove manhood or womanhood, oh, that could be a worrisome motive. To please someone, oh, that could be diagnosable. To persuade someone to care, that could be diagnosable. To experience the power to attract others, ooh, that's really diagnosable. And the last, to avenge earlier rejections by enticing partners and turning them down. Ooh, that's really diagnosable. So motivations vary. They don't have to be viewed through a pathological lens. Be careful. Yes?
Where in the list is the essential arrows of personality?
Probably the feelings, experiencing feelings, deep intimacy, yeah. Oh, let me go back before we move on. So, interventions. When we're not comfortable with a client's particular motivations, be open to learning from the client. Take a non-defensive stance. Okay to tell the client, I'm not familiar with that, if they're talking or wanting to talk about a particular sexual choice, sexual activity. This is one I really like. Reframe it as a diversity issue. That if you're working with someone in the kink community, you may not be kinky yourself. We don't have to judge or view that behavior as pathological. View it as a diversity issue. Just like you would a client of another race, another religion. Yes?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
I had a question just about this list I did, but I find it curious that the simple reason for pleasure Is it
Not there, right? Yeah, yeah, pleasure is not, yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Patrick, I think you had a question?
Yeah, I was just going to say on that one, even if I already know what the term means, because they're so fringe in some ways, I still ask them, tell me what it means to you.
To be this, to be that. Yes, good, good, yes. Oh, yes.
Everybody has different definitions.
Absolutely, great point, thank you, yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, so reframe it as a diversity issue. Put yourself in new situations. That's an interesting one. Go push your own sexual boundaries. See what that's like. See what comes up for you. It's a way to address your countertransference. Seek consultation is another option, or refer out if it's really something you are not familiar with or too uncomfortable to you think down the road you'll get too uncomfortable. Yes?
So this may be a naive question, but I'm wanting to backtrack a little bit, because the more information you're sharing, it's all so valuable. I'm wanting to come back to your terminology, sex positive.
Yes.
Because I feel that alone could be misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering where you're coming from and what the common understanding of even that term is.
Sexuality is healthy. Like I said in the slide, it can look a lot of different ways. I may practice one thing, but a person over here may be practicing something else.
It doesn't necessarily mean, this is always the question I come to when I'm training in this area. It doesn't necessarily mean that everything sexual is positive. Just like no constancy is present in other behaviors as well. We're always seeking the meaning of our behavior.
Right.
In therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So is that, I imagine that what becomes difficult is, you're going to be working with people who are, some of their sexual behaviors may not be positive or ego-syntonic.
I'm going to get to that. Yes. About problematic sexual behaviors, or like you said, ego-syntonic, ego-dystonic.
In the workshop you're talking about, that PG workshop with Marty, who I thought was wonderful, and he
Yeah.
wanted an answer.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, question. I'm sorry?
To push your own sexual boundaries?
Things like if you have a fantasy, ask your partner to play it out with you if you haven't done it. If there's things you haven't done yourself, I'll get to this, safe, sane, and consensual ways to explore that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Common mistake number 5. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this one. Not knowing alternative models of sexual development and our sexual response, also known as using those traditional models, Freud, Erikson, Masters and Johnson, Hellensinger, Kaplan. In that 10-hour pre-licensure course, I looked back, these are the ones I learned. And Hellensinger, Kaplan, as much as I adore her and her work, it's from the 1970s. There's been a lot of work and newer models that we're using in the field of sex therapy now. Yes, John?
I don't see David Schnarch.
Well, he's one of the newer folks, yes, yes. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So, So intervention, learn alternative, the newer model, stay on top of the subject. Can be everything from David Schnarch to Sue Johnson. I know there's a lot of EFT folks in here. Gottman is another one. I think these are names, theorists, clinicians out there that we all know. Pick one if you don't know one. Just pick one, get into it, learn it. Attend some conferences, workshops, things like that. Also, understand that sexual skills are gained. This is really something I work a lot with my clients. That sexual skills are gained and milestones are met. They occur across the lifespan. People often say to me, I feel so juvenile, I feel so adolescent in my sexuality. Well, I would argue we all have some element of that. We all have certain sexual milestones that we have not met ourselves. This is, getting back to what I was saying, it's a sex-negative culture. There's a lot of limited information and experiences that we're allowed. So to that,